Welcome to my driver video. We're going to discuss how to utilize the driver to help you shoot lower scores. The driver is obviously a ball that's teed the highest, the club has the least amount of loft, and it's moving the fastest speed. It's different than an iron in the fact that ultimately with the driver, we're trying to sweep the ball off the tee, be very neutral in how we attack it, or even hitting slightly up on it. The difference with that and an iron is an iron we're trying to be slightly steeper. So you will see players on the PGA Tour who are great drivers, but not great iron players, and vice versa. You'll see great iron players who are not great drivers. Most are led to believe that it's something psychological that they do different, but the fact of the matter is when we're hitting golf balls, what's happening at an impact is kind of this amalgamation of geometric principles that's happening, and that's what makes the two so different. So realize if you get frustrated when you're hitting your driver, is recognize it's 4 times harder to hit than your 3 would, and these are ultimately the reasons. 1, the sweet spot is further away from you. Okay, so the sweet spot's further away from me. 2, the center of gravity is the furthest away from the club face, making the face less stable and causing gear effects. So if off-center hits, the ball's going to start offline and then curve offline just from where your contact is. The third part is that it's moving faster than any other club in the bag, making the velocities more difficult to create proper alignments at impact. And the fourth reason it's more difficult is because the club, out of all the clubs we hit in the air, it has the least amount of loft. So by doing so, the club face becomes completely at 85% responsible for direction. So those are 4 reasons that you may be having difficulty hitting your driver. In this video, we're going to go through a number of different ideas, and ultimately I want you to understand when you're looking at these ideas, I don't teach a method. So I don't teach you have to put the club here, you have to put the club here, you have to do this. I'm going to give you an assortment of different grips, different hinges, different ways to use body mass, different ways to shift the weight, how to use the pressure in the ground, how to use the pivot, and ultimately the different profiles of how we're going to release the club. Hopefully from all that information and getting you to understand exactly what it is that you need to understand to improve, you'll be able to pick the pieces that you like, take them out, test it. Trial and error from Thomas Edison all the way to Tiger Woods is the way that we find anything out, and that's why I'm going to stay away from saying that all of you individual, unique people watching this video have to put the club in the same position. And we come to one of the most important aspects of the game of golf, and it's ultimately the first thing that you do, and that's how you grip the golf club. As we know, roughly with irons to 7-iron, 75% of the ball's starting direction is based on the orientation of the club face at impact, so whether it's pointed to the right or it's pointed to the left. With the driver now, you're dealing at 85%. So at 85%, that means that more than 3/4 of the success that you're going to have in a golf shot is going to be due to where the face points at impact. So what affects that more than anything is the way that we grip it. Now, I've never seen 2 grips the same. We'll see grip examples like Matt Kuchar with a very strong left hand. The right hand's strong as well. So Matt Kuchar is going to have what looks like, obviously, a shut club face. So when the club face goes back, you can see the loft is pointed at the ground. Okay, that is not a good or a bad thing. It just depends on what you're incentivizing yourself to do in your swing. For example, another one of my players that I work with, Justin Rose, his grip's very neutral. So by neutral, when he looks down at it optically, he sees this V going to his right shoulder and the right hand V going to his right shoulder. Now, as it's always been said in instruction articles, that's what you want to see, but that's not for everybody. He just happens to be in that neutral position. From that grip position, Justin's club face stays perpendicular or square to the arc that he's swinging on. And then the third example is another one of my players, Eduardo Molinari, or Hogan, or who you would look at, is their grip is very weak. So what's happening is the club face is staying open to the arc that it's moving on. So understanding those three different principles, look, Matt Kuchar likes to hit a ball that starts left and goes to the right. So obviously having a grip that creates a club face that points to the left is the first part in that. Eduardo Molinari likes to hit the most amount of push draw, so the ball starts the furthest to the right before it curves back to the left. So by getting a weak grip in there, he ensures that the orientation of the face coming into the target is obviously right of the target. Matt Kuchar's is slightly left. Justin Rose's is very square. So let's look deeper into what's happening at the wrist and what's occurring. So when Matt Kuchar grips it in the strong position there, this lead arm is already pronated. The wrist is already in extension. So when he sets up to take the club back, just the grip alone is going to create a little bit of a different hinging pattern for him. When Eduardo starts off to go to the other end, with his left hand weak or counterclockwise, right hand counterclockwise, when he takes it back from here, he's already in supination and his wrist is in ulnar deviation. So when he takes it back from there, we're going to see a completely different effect on the takeaway. So you want to make sure that your grip is working with the way you're creating leverage and hinging in the backswing. Now, ideally, when we're talking about that's face position and how that's going to affect it, that obviously is going to have a lot to do with direction. Now, when you're getting into the grip itself, you'll hear so many things: grip it, overlap. Okay? So by overlap, the pinky's on top of the index finger. I would advise that for people who have hands on the average to larger size to do that. Then we've seen an example of that is an interlock, where the pinky finger and the index finger lock into each other. And then I think if you have smaller hands, what I taught a lot of kids, and I've taught a lot of players in general, is a 10-finger grip. So the importance of knowing what grip gives you the best opportunity to one grip and then control the club, because the association that our hands have with the club is going to have a lot to do with how we take it back and where the face is and the orientation that comes from that. So there isn't a perfect grip for everyone, but there's a perfect grip for each individual. So by looking at it, if you feel like you want to get your grip slightly stronger, then you have to take the grip more through the tips of the fingers there. From there, it allows my hand to get on top. All right, and just by looking at this Nike glove, you can see if I take it in the palm of my hand, these lines right here are hard to even detect. If I take it in the tips of my fingers, so I'm basically at a slight diagonal through the middle of my fingers, you can now see these two lines are much more this way. So rather than just accepting that you have to see two knuckles on this hand and the V's are pointed at your right shoulder, you can play around with different types of associations to see what you're getting. And as I always say, trial and error is the key to success. So by doing these different things, knowing where you're hitting it and why you're hitting it there is going to be helpful you to find your ultimate grip. Now, from a neutral grip, it's still taking the same diagonal, but now it's a little bit more through the knuckle side. So once I rotate my hand onto it there, you can see these lines here, and that puts me into that position. And then if I take it the most in the palm, so if I never wanted to hit another hook for the rest of my life, I would take it the most in the palm, and then when I start down, I mean, I feel like I'm holding a putter there. But from there, it's going to be very difficult to get the face pointed to the left. So what you have to do is figure out, by playing around with your grip, these different grip positions are going to change the face position, which in turn is going to change the start line. And I think that by getting a good grip, the way that is going to help you and hit the shot that you want to, from there you give yourself incentive to create a path that matches the face position.